October 13, 1975. Nashville, Tennessee. The Grand Ole Opry House. The biggest awards night in country music is almost over. The cameras are rolling. The entire industry is watching. Charlie Rich, the reigning entertainer of the year, silver-haired and immaculate, takes the stage to hand the title to his successor. He opens the envelope. He reads the name inside. Then he reaches into his pocket, produces a cigarette lighter, and sets the card on fire. Right there on stage, in front of everyone. The world immediately decided what this was. A protest. A defiant stand against pop music's invasion of Nashville. The Silver Fox refusing to bow. That story is wrong. What actually happened, the full story, the thing Charlie Rich himself later explained, and almost no one remembers, is both stranger and sadder than the legend. Charlie Rich was born in 1932 in Colt, Arkansas, population 312, a Delta farming community so small it barely registered on any map. His father sang gospel in the local Baptist church. His mother played piano. And a black tenant farmer named C.J. Allen, who worked the family's land, was the first person who ever sat with the young Charlie and showed him how to play blues piano. That detail matters more than any other in this story. Rich studied music formally at the University of Arkansas, joined the Air Force, and formed a jazz group called the Velvetones in Oklahoma. When he left the military in 1956, he did not go to Nashville. He went to Memphis, Tennessee, to 706 Union Avenue, home of Sire Records. He played jazz and R&B in clubs at night. He wrote his own material. He believed he had something original to offer. Then he walked through the door of Sire Records. Sam Phillips, the man who had discovered Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Jerry Lee Lewis, listened to Charlie Rich's demonstration recordings and delivered his verdict plainly. His music was too jazzy, too sophisticated, not commercial enough. A colleague handed Rich a stack of Jerry Lee Lewis records and told him to study them. "Come back when you sound more like that." Rich complied. He returned to Sun and was hired as a session musician. For years, he played piano on records by Lewis, Cash, Billy Lee Riley, Carl Mann, and others. Sessions that would later be recognized as part of the same Sire Records rockabilly ecosystem that produced the Million Dollar Quartet, Elvis, Cash, Lewis, and Carl Perkins in one room, one afternoon in December 1956. He wrote songs that other artists recorded. One composition written for Carl Mann, "I'm Comin' Home," was later recorded by Elvis Presley. Charlie Rich was building the careers of stars, while his own career went nowhere. The 1960s were, for the most part, a decade of failure. He cycled through labels, Sun, Groove, Smash, High Records, releasing singles that critics occasionally admired and audiences largely ignored. He had one genuine hit, Lonely Weekends in 1960, which climbed to number 22 on the pop charts. Then, nothing matched it for over a decade. In 1967, Epic Records signed him. The man responsible was producer Billy Sherrill. Sherrill had a theory. Country audiences were more loyal than rock fans. Charlie Rich, silver-haired, weathered, carrying 35 years of musical experience, could connect with them. If the music was right. The music Sherrill had in mind was not jazz. It was countrypolitan, a term for the strings-over-rhythm track sound, lush and polished, designed to move between country radio and pop radio without fully belonging to either. Sherrill had already built the countrypolitan blueprint with George Jones and Tammy Wynette, and he believed Rich could be its biggest vehicle yet. Rich was ambivalent at best. He later told Newsweek, "I don't really like happy music. I don't think it says anything." But Sherrill was right about the audience. In 1973, Behind Closed Doors reached number 1 on both the country and pop charts simultaneously. It won Rich a Grammy, 3 CMA Awards, and 4 ACM Awards, the Academy of Country Music's West Coast counterpart, whose embrace of crossover artists was itself a point of friction with Nashville traditionalists. He followed it immediately with The Most Beautiful Girl. Same result. Charlie Rich, jazz musician, Sun Records' Reject, 15-year overnight success, was suddenly the biggest country star in America. He had not changed. The packaging had. In 1974, he was named the CMA Entertainer of the Year. He stood at the podium to accept. By most accounts in the room that night, he looked deeply uncomfortable. By the time the 1975 CMA Awards arrived, something was fracturing, and not just inside Charlie Rich. Nashville itself was at war. The outlaw movement, led by Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, was in open revolt against the polished establishment that Countrypolitan represented. Just the year before, 24 artists had gathered at George Jones and Tammy Wynette's house to protest the CMA's increasing push toward pop crossover. The tension in that room on October 13th was not imagined. Rich's drinking had become a serious problem. He had been experiencing what he would later describe as an anxiety panic disorder, a condition that had made public appearances increasingly difficult for a man who had never been comfortable in the spotlight. He was not nominated for any award that year. He was asked, instead, to present the biggest prize of the evening, Entertainer of the Year. Some weeks before the show, Rich had broken his foot in an accident at his home in Memphis. He was managing the pain with prescription medication. On the night of October 13, he was backstage in a dressing room. He and another country artist began working through gin and tonics. The show was long. Entertainer of the Year was the final award of the night. By the time Rich was called to the stage, the prescription medication and the alcohol had done their work. He was visibly intoxicated. He made his way to the podium. He slurred through the list of nominees: John Denver, Waylon Jennings, Loretta Lynn, Ronnie Millsap, Conway Twitty. He paused. He looked at Loretta Lynn and asked her out on a date. Then he opened the envelope. He read the name. He reached into his pocket. The card was burning before he finished announcing the winner. John Denver, watching by satellite from another city, had no idea what had occurred. He delivered a gracious acceptance speech. Waylon Jennings, seated in the audience, later wrote in his autobiography that he enjoyed that moment more than winning his own award. They went to grab him, but when Charlie was drunk, it was best to stay out of his way. Oh yeah, John Denver won Entertainer of the Year. Now that's what I call country. The country music press decided the story before the night was over. It was a rebellion. A traditionalist taking a stand against pop's invasion of Nashville. The CMA banned Rich from all future shows. His own son later told reporters, "He used bad judgment. The last thing my father would have wanted to do was set himself up as judge of another musician." He felt badly that people thought it was a statement against John Denver. Rich tried to travel to Colorado to find Denver and apologize in person. He never managed to reach him. Years later, asked directly about the incident, Rich called it a mistake. He described the anxiety panic disorder that had been building for years. He said he had been overworked, and then he added quietly, almost as an afterthought, that maybe, unconsciously, it was a way of saying he wanted to try something else with his career, that he did not want to be pigeonholed as a country music artist, not a protest, a breakdown, and an escape attempt. Rich had a handful of hits in the years that followed. Rollin' with the Flow reached #1 in 1977. A duet with Janie Frick, On My Knees, reached #1 in 1978. A track tied to a Clint Eastwood film, I'll Wake You Up When I Get Home, cracked the top 3 in 1979. Then the chart entries stopped. By 1981, Rich had removed himself from the spotlight. For over a decade, he was largely silent. He returned in 1992 with a final album. It was not a country record. Pictures and Paintings was a jazz album produced by music journalist Peter Guralnick, released on Sire Records. Critics praised it. It sold modestly. It was the most personal work of a 35-year career. The jazzman had come back. 3 years later, in the summer of 1995, Charlie Rich and his wife Margaret Ann were driving to Florida for a vacation. They had just left Natchez, Mississippi, where they had watched their son Alan perform at a casino venue. Alan's opening act that evening had been Tex-Mex star Freddie Fender. the Before the Next Teardrop Falls singer who had his own story of talent deferred and industry neglect. Charlie Rich died during that journey from a blood clot in his lung. He was 62 years old. Sam Phillips told him he was too jazzy for country music. Billy Sherrill dressed him in strings and studio polish and turned him into the biggest star in the genre. And on one October night in Nashville, medicated, dissociated, carrying 15 years of someone else's career, Charlie Rich reached into his pocket and told the truth. Not about John Denver, about himself. The most famous act of country music rebellion wasn't a protest at all. It was a man burning the costume. Burning.